Welcome to Psychic Evolution with evidential psychic medium Jamie Clark and spiritual coach and healer Maggie Clark.
And welcome back to another episode of Psychic Evolution. I'm Jamie Clark.
And I'm Maggie Clark, and this is a podcast where you discover the psychic potential within to empower yourself and manifest your psychic and mediumship gifts.
And these abilities are so natural, they're supernatural.
And today we want to dig into the higher self and the integration of the higher self in our psyche, in our minds, in our beings, in our bodies. Like, what is this thing with the higher self? How do we get this connection more solidified and more active in our lives so we can really rely on our intuition?
And can we share, what do we mean by our higher self?
Our higher self is the bridge of connection between us and source. So when we choose to incarnate on earth, we choose to have a higher self that helps bridge that relationship so that we're always connected to our soul. We're always connected to source. We're always connected to the all that is. Our higher self is literally, we think of it as a higher aspect of ourself because it is on a different vibrational frequency than us. And yes, it is maybe more expanded, higher, elevated. It's not a leveling up, but they are definitely on a different plane of existence. Sometimes your higher self can be a past life that you've had. Sometimes it can be a conglomerate of many lifetimes that you've had mixture together. Like, oh, I need a little bit of this from my soul, a little bit of that from this lifetime, a little bit of that. Let's put that all together because that's what's going to help Maggie in this lifetime really fulfill her soul purpose and her soul growth and why she's choosing to be on this planet at this time. So the higher self creates the bridge of connection between the oversoul and this physical life experience. So the little Maggie and the oversoul of my soul essence is bridged with the higher self. And it's through this bridge of connection that we call the higher self that we can grow and expand into who we really truly are as a soul energy. Because this physical body cannot contain all of the soul vibration in any lifetime. It's too big, it's too intense, it's too much energy. We would literally blow ourselves up and right? So what we have to do is then see how much we can embody in the physical body, how much energy from that soul. Now, our higher self is the guide for this. The higher self is the guide to help bridge connections to spirit, sometimes connections to the other side and our loved ones, different dimensions, different frequencies of energy, maybe extraterrestrials. But the higher self is the bridge that you find consciously to help you explore other aspects and deeper, more richer aspects of soul.
And I think that also ties into that sometimes we'll just have information drop into our mind, different than our loved ones communicating. This is our higher self. And to me, the higher self is the attainment that we've already accomplished and connected with the all that is, the I am that I am. Now, some people perceive that, well, if you're already there, everything's done. And Chi, my master guide, was like, well, Jamie, it could be a little bit different. And he showed me the fact that, as we perceive it, being on top of the unification, realizing we are the entire universe, there's not just one way to experience that. There are many others, but 360 degrees of potential life experiences that you can go in. And from that higher self of already attained the oneness, that can be the guiding system, the guiding voice of your soul that can help you with insights, with circumstances, and sometimes life direction.
Yeah, and it's really cool because in psychic evolution, as you're evolving, the biggest thing that we get all the time is, how do I trust my intuition? How do I trust that the messages are accurate? How do I trust myself that I am, really not just making things up in my head, but this is really a message and this is really what I feel about myself and about who I am. And it's so important to cultivate this relationship to the higher self so that you can rest assured that you're receiving great intuitive messages. And then you can start relying on yourself. You can start depending, because once you have that relationship with your higher self and it's locked in and it feels amazing and it's guiding you and it's everything that you have ever wanted as literally a guide in this lifetime. That's what the higher self is for. And when we connect to the higher self, we then can distinguish, okay, what then is the lower self? The lower self might be my ego. It might be things that I'm afraid of, my insecurities, the very human things that we all have to contend with as we develop and grow in this lifetime. What makes us strong? What helps us grow into the potential of who we are as a soul here on this planet? How do we bring heaven to earth? The higher self is that bridge. And sometimes we do have to look at the things that keep us from the higher frequencies of energy that we can attain, because it's a healing journey and it's a process of self-development. And that's actually the journey that I took to discover my higher self, was to pick apart my ego, to pick apart my fear. And remember, the ego is not something you're going to destroy and let go of and get rid of forever. The ego creates your personality. It creates and defines ways to keep you safe and protected. It just gets misinformation through cultural and family and all this conditioning that we have as a kid sometimes as to how to keep ourselves safe, because if we have an experience when we're young and then our ego steps in, it's like, oh, that definitely created some kind of fear or uncomfortable energy. Let me keep you from that experience. The ego will literally try to protect you. Now, as we develop and get older, then we can have a conscious working relationship with that ego so that it can be a healthy ego. It can build confidence. It allows you to express your personality, and it allows you to raise that frequency and integrate the ego with the higher self. We don't ban the ego. We don't get rid of it. We transform it. We integrate it into higher levels of energy, light, and love. To do that, we address our fears. We address the things that keep us from connecting to that higher vibration. And once we have enough self-love in place, self-respect, good boundaries with ourselves, that's when the higher self steps up, steps in and says, okay, now you're ready to explore and expand into these higher frequencies, these higher dimensions. Now, through life, again, we look at our issues as like an onion. We unpeel a layer and then we're stuck with another layer and another layer and another layer. And eventually we might get to the pearl of the onion, which is great because then we understand the essence of the issue of what created the onion to begin with. What was the seed of the onion? And that's beautiful. We don't get rid of the onions that we have in life. Okay. We don't skate through this life without issues. And we never get rid of all of our issues because it's part of our imprinting. But what we do is we create new imprinting through the higher self and the connection to the higher realms, the higher frequencies of energy that we can tune into, tap into to help us evolve. Once we get to that level, and it's a process, guys, be patient with yourself if you're just starting this journey out. Because, I mean, it took me at least 10 years before I had the confidence of an integrated ego, right? And an integrated higher self before I could start really relying and saying, okay, I can do this. Now, I didn't wait those 10 years to start doing my spiritual work and to start helping other people. Okay, I started that right away because if you're one foot in front of another person on a path, you can turn around and say, hey, watch your step. There might be a rock there. Okay, you can always guide people that are coming behind you. You can always help people. So just kind of remember that as you go forward, that this is an integration of energy from the soul through the higher self into the little Maggie here. And this is part of the evolution that we're going to experience as we develop psychically.
And I think you're bringing up an interesting point as you're sharing that the higher self and the lower self, literally the highs and lows of life, are always connected. And when we've gone through some experiences, our higher self, our oversoul, as we perceive it in that way, will be able to give us guidance that go, hey, you know what, we've already attained this, so you may not need to do this, but here's some information and insight so that if you choose, you've got some information to work with. Because notice, on average, our higher self, our guides, are not always trying to make us get the attention. It's if we're listening, they're talking with us. If not, they're not going to push and manipulate us. It's that kind of guidance that they want us to realize that we are the empowerment of choice, the end result. They can give us insight in different perspectives, but ultimately, in this case, we will live our own choices from the highs to the lows. And in addition, kind of bringing up the point to me to go, we're everything, the highs and the lows. It's kind of like, just for me, if you perceive that you're only of the good, well, we're all kind of in the ocean of consciousness. That darkness at the bottom is no less than the top. Or do we realize it's just the law of equivalence? It is where it is. Yet we are the entire ocean. Every droplet is the unification of us. And what if just potentially a little bit of symbology is that the droplet in the ocean is our soul of experience? That the ocean of consciousness, all of these lifetimes that we experience in many different dimensions, many different universes, are creating that flow of consciousness. Because on average, we'll tend to see, or at least I do, symbolically, water's representative of spirituality. And so just effortlessly, that's just how I've done it. But in realizing and gaining more insight along the way, I started to understand and go, well, we are everything. And do you want to go down into the, lower self and function from there? Do you want to stay where you're at and hopefully blend it? Or do you want to go to the top the best that you can and get that kind of a perspective? But realizing it is all you that is connecting and communicating.
So I'd love to share with you guys the way that I started really cultivating and really being able to trust in that higher guidance, the higher self energy. I started with picking apart my reactions in life. Now, every time I react, I give my power away. Reactions stem from fear. Responses stem from love. And so what we look at is when I'm reacting, I'm giving my power away, and that there's a fear that is being triggered, okay? Now, when we claim responsibility for this, which is the ability to respond, we then switch the vibration from a victimization into, okay, I'm going to take charge of my life and I'm going to create a bridge of connection from something that might trigger a fear to how can I respond instead of react to situations in life that I get triggered in. That's where I started. So every time I reacted, I said, whoa, 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 stop. I stopped the reaction in my mind. Okay. And then I looked at it. I said, where is this coming from? Why am I reacting? I asked this question, why, until I revealed the fear that was behind it. So say, for instance, I was afraid of judgment. Someone made a comment. I took it personally. I was like, oh, right. Okay. So fear of judgment is a very common fear. Most of us have to deal with this at some point in our lives, that we're afraid of being judged for maybe whatever we say, do, whatever. Okay. So what do I do with that? I stop the reaction and then I send love to that fear of judgment. I literally am taking a conscious choice of responsibility, the ability to respond by sending love, taking a positive action to where it was a negative reaction. I am switching it. Okay. This is where we start rewriting the conditioning of our life. It's like a broken record. If anybody remembers record players anymore, it keeps going around and around, playing the same tune, the same tune. We are conditioned at a young age to play the same tune over and over and over again until we break the record and rewrite the script. So when you do this, when you cancel out the reaction and you replace it with love, you replace it with a frequency that's a higher vibrational frequency, you are now acting in accordance with a higher vibration that tunes you in instantaneously to your higher self. So I always would be like, okay, I'm reacting. Let me figure out why I'm reacting. Let me identify the fear. Let me send love. And over time, what I discovered was I was reacting less and learning how to respond more in the moment without giving my energy away, without giving my power away to situations that created fear. Instead, I created a bridge of connection to love. And as soon as I started working with this, the higher self could step in and give me clear messages as to how to do it more effectively, what to look at, allowing me to remember things that happened to me in my life that caused a certain reactive measure in my life to situations and events, or how people would approach me or not approach me. And that right there allowed me to connect to my higher self. And so I started journaling. I used journaling as a key to activate the higher self, whether it was automatic writing, whether it was just like journaling about my issues and how I could redefine and recreate the patterns that I had in my life. And that's when my higher self stepped up, stepped in, and gave me incredibly clear messages. And at first, it felt like I was just writing to myself, but then I realized, wait, this isn't a thought that I've ever had before. This isn't a little Maggie thought. This is the higher self. This is me speaking to myself, giving me a higher perspective, giving me a higher way through love to transverse my life and to shift it, to change it, and to ultimately have a very empowering lifestyle. And this was gold. So I highly recommend picking up a pen, picking up a journal, and writing about the things that cause you distress, right? Where we react. But then as you're writing, once you get out the garbage, right? Get it all out. Give yourself a release, okay, for the reactions. It's important, right? Once that's out of you, what's left? The higher self, the higher perspective, the road to love, the path to higher frequencies. And when you keep writing, the energy shifts, and then all of a sudden you're giving yourself the message that you need to transform your life.
Not only that, I think you bring up an interesting point. To me, it is the responsibility of our own personal empowerment and life experience. As well as I always say that the responsibility of the universe is to reflect and respond to the thoughts, feelings, and actions that we emanate and consistently vibe with. And the responsibility is unconditional. There is no good or bad to the universe. It is all but an experience. Now, the challenge a lot of times becomes that we have the right intent, but we tend to function more of the problem. And then we wonder why we keep getting more of the problem or similar circumstances like that. We're not ignorant, but I found that if I have a challenge or a problem, I no longer try to approach that problem to try to change it, because for so long I would have a challenge or a problem and I'd try to change it as I approached it and see it differently, and I kept getting similar circumstances. And I asked Chi, my master guide, I'm like, Chi, what's going on? I am approaching these problems to change them, yet I keep getting more problems like the same thing I'm trying to change. And his response is, well, Jamie, you have the right intent. However, once you approach that problem, you're focused on the problem. You're now feeding the problem rather than the solution. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Because I need to change the problem. He said, how about rather than try to change the problem, you create the solution and work from that vibe. Because just like Mag is saying, and a lot of people is, it's not easy to trust what I get. Well, my thing is I put it to the test consistently, in this case with Chi and my higher self, that if you're giving me information and insight, let's make sure that it's valid and implying that I can work with it. Because if you give me information that there's no way I could use, just a bunch of information. I want the empowerment of self-realization within that information. And when we can realize that our responsibility to us is to stay connected to us and find ourselves within life and that life within us, then we realize that the responsibility of the universe has always been there in every way to respond and co-create our life experiences.
And Jamie's relationship to his master guide Chi is very similar to most people's relationships to their higher self. So, Chi steps in and gives Jamie this information because he's working with Chi all the time as a master guide. And this has been very unique to Jamie's life experience. He's been working with Chi's since you were probably 5 years
Yeah.
old, since you were activated. So most of us don't even realize we have
And
a guide.
she's like, and before that.
Right. Most people, thanks, Chi. Most people don't realize that we have guides, that we have a higher self. We're not taught this at a young age, so this is very foreign. But because Jamie had a very unique experience growing up with a psychic medium as a mom, cultivating his gifts, being activated at a very early age, he had more consciousness around that. So Chi became his an acting force that acted like most people's higher selves would act for them. So realize when she's giving Jamie information, he's saying, hey, look at the higher perspective. Here it is. And this is exactly what your higher self is always trying. I'll refrain from saying trying, always giving you and always imparting with you a higher frequency of energy to tune into if you choose to, a new perspective that can help elevate your energy, elevate your happiness, really expand you into a place of empowerment and growth and strength. Our human potential is so vast and so incredibly cool. And once we get over some of the lower vibrations that we have to deal with just being human, and we transform into those higher vibrations, our higher self is always our main cheerleader. It's always our main connecting point.
And sometimes it's not easy to understand some of the information or the ideas that might drop into our mind. And it's not always our higher self, but the communication for us to receive that information from a higher self is always open and on. It is our choice whether we want to listen to that awareness and act on that information one way or another, or completely ignore it. Because more than likely, you might be sitting here going, I don't know my guides, and go, really? Isn't that interesting? They never bug you. They don't push you. They're just there to guide you. If you're open for information. Notice it is not about manipulation and that you have to. It's allowing you to choose to. And your responsibility is first to be responsible for yourself and the way that you perceive your reality the best that you can, and realize that that higher self is open and guiding you in directions that at least you have a potential to choose from. So we start to realize that, okay, so maybe I'm not doing this alone. And I think that kind of interesting, but as Mag is talking about the higher self and the lower self, I kind of equate it like the higher self is we are in the ocean of consciousness. And in that ocean, our higher self is at the top of the ocean that has a different vantage point that might be able to see more of the potential experiences around us at the bottom where it's dark that most of us tend to function in. And we don't even allow the light to permeate that. And so when that lower self is, notice you're allowed to be in the darkness. It doesn't make you have to be into the light. It's do you choose to and what functions for you. And it's that kind of connection that my responsibility to me is do the best I can to help others and myself. Because I found that one, I will always help others, but two, that after many years of always helping others and not myself, I started to feel like a hypocrite. And when I started to realize, well, wait a minute, if I'm helping others, I'd better be willing to help myself. Click, it started to fall into place more effectively, more connectively, and more understandably, so that I'm not going, what does that mean? It's, oh, okay, here's a thought or a feeling or just a picture. Our higher self is not limited to only one way of communicating. There are many different ways. I've just had enough time in my own, the best that I can, to find a lot of those different ways of communication. That way I'm open and receptive to go, I do know that the more I know, I don't know nothing, man. But I am always open to learn. And we are always growth-seeking beings. For no matter how many dreams, how many aspirations in life we have, once we attain them, we have more. Half the fun is the journey getting there.
This is really cool because the higher self and the connection to higher self has been pivotal for my development, for Jamie's development. And all of it says is that, wow, we can do this. Now, a lot of people really want more guidance. So we have formed a retreat that we're going to be doing in Sedona this year in November 4th, 5th, and 6th of 2022. We're going to be gathering in Sedona, which is gorgeous, by the way. This is such a very spiritual place. This whole event center is for spiritual development. It is just a crazy cool place. And we're gathering with Vivian Chevette, who's been on season 3, 4, and 5 of our podcast, and also Peter Benson, who is on season 5 of our podcast. We did a retreat with them this summer, a starseed retreat. We love their energy. We love their dynamic frequencies. And so we've come together again in Sedona in November. We're going to be having a full retreat just on the bridge of connection, the bridge of dimensions with the higher self. It's so cool. We're going to be doing some automatic writing if you want to learn how to. There's some quantum integration, some great healing energy that Vivian's going to bring in from her Arcturian team. We just have like a really cool lineup and fun things to do to help integrate, to help connect, and to help us get that bridge of connection more solidified so that we can take this into our lives. Because right now, as we are consciously expanding, humanity is going through this beautiful expansion of consciousness. The more connected we are with the higher self, the more guided we're going to feel, the more integrated we're going to be able to quickly integrate higher frequencies, light codes, dimensions, whatever we are allowed to expand into in our own time and frame of reference. But this is part of us growing up as human beings so that we can become really a global family and then take our place in the galactic family. This is a stage process, but the higher self is key right now for people to feel confident that they can do this so that they have that guidance, they have the wisdom, they have the integration and the healing necessary to go forward and to cultivate higher dimensions in their life and in their conscious expression. So if you guys are interested, we will have a link in the show notes or go to psychicevolution.net and you'll see it on our event page. But it's amazing if you want to integrate your higher self and really heal those places that can help you take home with you your higher self so that you have this in your daily life to help guide you, to help you grow into your human potential. It's going to be really, really cool. And if you've never been to Sedona, it is amazing. So we look forward to seeing you all there with us. Okay.
And that's beautiful. And just to my awareness, a lot of us will perceive that our guides are dropped in. They choose us. And they do to a certain extent. But as well as it's not the disempowerment that we're reactive, that they've chosen us and we have to interact. What if there's a potential that your higher self, the one already evolved, is able to feel the vibe of these different guides? What if our higher self knows in this particular life a lot of the lessons and opportunities of learning that we'll have, and that our higher self is effective and efficiently enough to know the talents of orchestration on the individualized guides that we have on our team? And the more the merrier. I need all the help I can get. So I have a lot of guides in many different capacities. But also finding out that the information of how I might have been perceiving things for most of my life to go, well, they just chose me and I had no recourse or ability to accept or not. It's just I had to. No, it's not to me. It's not manipulation. It's co-creation. And with our higher self and the ability to have the idea of what we're going to learn in this life, because for the most part, we have an awareness of what we're going to experience. That way we can give ourselves the higher self potential from that perspective of what's coming up for us, what's behind us, what's to the side, because you have that different vantage point of information. But it's also the empowerment of realization. And what I mean by that is Chi could give me all the insight he wants, but if it's not manifesting and I don't find accuracy in it, I wouldn't be listening. He's been very efficient for me, and I got complete trust in his ability to read energy. And it's not that everything's easy, but I do trust a lot more effectively and effortlessly the communication from Chi and my other guides. Because it's nice to have the team that not everyone understands why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing and all that. So we just kind of saunter through life, go, well, I'm here, okay, instead of finding what vibes with us. What do you feel like you want to do? What does your soul want to express? And how would you like to express this in your life? Because our guides and our higher self, which is our guide, are able to guide us productively as a potential direction. They can only give us the insight. It is eventually our choice whether we listen to that information and act on it one way or another.
What I find fascinating in my experience connecting to my higher self is when eventually I had a past life memory of my higher self. My higher self is a past life of mine. So once I got to a certain point of connecting with my higher self and really feeling bonded with my higher self, I was going through something in my life And it was time to learn that my higher self had gone through something very similar. And so I had a whole past life connection just reveal itself to me, as is in a vision. And I saw my higher self. I knew exactly it was my higher self. So I was able to see my higher self. I was able to get a feel of how I lived in that time frame and what I was doing and why it was so important. But it also helped me bridge why I chose that higher self in this lifetime and what energy was present during very specific times in that lifetime that really helped integrate my life experience here. And so when we get to that point where we can remember past lives, if our higher self is one past life, sometimes like I said, it's a conglomerate of different lifetimes, sometimes from here, sometimes from other systems. So, but again, when we get more integrated with the higher self, then we get more connected and we can understand and reveal why we made those relationships and connections and why we chose that frequency in this lifetime to come through. And again, there's no comparison, no competing when we're talking about higher selves. If my higher self is a past life and Jamie's higher self, I'm pretty sure, is a conglomerate of many lifetimes, because he needed different aspects of energy from his soul source. There's no comparison whether one is better or the other. Jamie's journey is so much different than my journey has been. So I needed this to discover myself. He needed that to discover himself. Remember, you choose this before you come in, this higher self connection. And so it's really cool that you can always like filter in and learn and grow and then expand to understand who are you as an eternal being and what was the wisdom of that lifetime and why is that important to bring to the wisdom that I can cultivate in this lifetime. Remember, we are growth seeking beings, just like Jamie says. We're here to cultivate soul wisdom. Earth is an experiential planet of growth and development. And so when we come here, we grow and we develop and we take that wisdom back to the soul, back to the all that is, back to the eternal nature of our essence.
You bring up an interesting point for me, and that is if your higher self was here on the planet and you lived a life or many lifetimes as that higher self, who was your higher self during those lifetimes? Or, are you saying that we are the higher self already? Oh,
Just think there could be a little Maggie as someone's higher self right now in another world, in another time, in another place.
and doing the best we can to understand that life experience is not only experienced on this planet at the same time. To me, we are multidimensional beings. And then now we get into the multidimensional us, and all of us have that one higher self. So to me, I think Maggie's bringing up the point to go, we are our higher selves. We are functioning. We have the information. And right, sometimes we'll go through these experiences first in our higher self as we perceive it, so that when we're following through with other lifetimes, at least on this planet, we feel like we've been grounded to a certain extent, meaning we're connected with this planet a little bit more solidly. Because more than likely, unless you're like me and you're soulscaping all the time, you don't worry about being on other worlds and other dimensions. You focus on this one at this time in this way, and it's very real, just like every other reality that you're experiencing that you at the moment may not be consciously aware of with your analytical mind, yet your soul is registering everything in that Solidex of life experience as an eternal being.
So, we have an episode on meeting your master guide. And so, what I'm going to encourage all of you to do is listen to that episode. But when Jamie talks you into the garden, he talks you through an exercise of meeting your master guide in a garden. When he gets to that point, I want you to replace the master guide with your higher self. I want you to make your own connections. Take yourself to your garden. Make sure that you have two comfy chairs, sit down in one, ask your higher self to sit down in another, and then have a conversation. Ask some questions. What is your name? What is your essence? Show me. Do you have a message for me today? Every day I check in with my higher self. Now I use tarot cards because I'm a tarotist, and of course, like I'm going to throw down some cards, but I'm always asking a message from my higher self when I shuffle. Always. And so when I read cards, and this is fun if you guys are, learning how to be tarot readers out there. When you're reading cards, if you filter it through the higher self, you will get different messages than when you filter it through the ego or through the little Maggie. And you can just have the intention when you shuffle, like, and when you're reading, and then your messages are going to be really clear. Some people find it's very difficult to read for themselves because they can't be the observer. But our higher self is always the observer. So when you get stuck in that rut of like, oh, it's so hard to read for myself because I can't look at this objectively, I want you to still read for yourself and say, okay, I'm going to kick it upstairs and say, higher self, you read for me. And then trust, trust, trust. Maybe even try writing instead of just thinking it in your head to give your higher self a chance to do some automatic writing with you. See if you get different messages because you're writing instead of just thinking. That's another cool way of connection that you can utilize, but keep practicing, because if we are having a hard time being objective, that just means that we have more work to do to tune into the higher self. That's all. And it's right there. It's already tons of messages there. It's just an integrative process. So keep reading for yourself, guys. Don't ever put your cards away and say, I can't read for myself because I can't be objective. This is what you want to do. You want to keep reading for yourself so that you know that you can get different messages. And you'll feel the difference out over time. Like, I'll be reading and I'm like, oh, I've never read this card before. So I know it's not coming from what I know. If I'm reading it a completely different way, I'm reading it because there's a message here through that higher self. And maybe, I'll use all my clairs when I read. Maybe my higher self is going to show me pictures or give me a phrase or give me a word or something to read through those cards with. It happens all the time. And this is the bridge that I've also used to cultivate the higher self. And it's been fantastic because I can let go of what I know about the tarot cards. And again, I've studied them a lot, yes, but I can let that all go and go off on tangents and allow myself to follow the current that the higher self is expressing to me, or the vision or the words or whatever, however I'm receiving that information. So again, using these tools of connection is also a means to develop relationships to your higher self, whether it's oracle cards, whether it's tarot cards. These are tools that we can use to bridge the connection to the higher self. That's what they're intended for.
And bringing up an interesting point that to me, we are always the observer and the experiencer at the same time. There have been a number of times where I'm doing a public presentation and I'm standing there bringing through in mediumship information and all of these dynamics, and then out of the blue, bip, it's like I'm still talking, doing my thing, doing the readings, but now energy-wise, I can see me in front doing the readings while I'm sitting here observing the experience. It's freaking incredible. But not only that, what if that's exactly how we are as our higher self and us, the experiencer and the observer? Abilities to give us sometimes different perspective and different ways of handling things, if we choose to do that, that could be more effective. And if we can keep it simple, as easy as possible, we'll get out of our own way. Because Chi, my master guide always refers to it as the complexity of simplicity. It is simple. We just over-complex it to go, what? Huh? And so for myself, Chi is very patient with me and very insightful. And there was a gentleman for many years named, I think, the Amazing Randy. And he was a naysayer for the psychic stuff, and there's nothing, you can't do it. Until he was laying there one evening in bed. He had his beautiful little kitty in the center of the bed that usually sleeps in that way. And in an instant, bip, he was up at the ceiling looking down at his physical body. And then the cat that was in the middle gets up, looks at him, and then goes back down to lay down. He has now become a yay-sayer. I love that because I always say be skeptical about everything, question everything, just be open. Once he had that experience, he had no choice but to go, I don't understand it, but I just experienced it. And him kind of paying that value point on that experience changed his perspective of how he views life. And sometimes it just takes that one experience to shift our whole consciousness of awareness.
So, the mantra of the day is I am open to receive messages, love, and energy from my higher self. That's your mantra of the day. So, have fun with your psychic evolution. We look forward to seeing you if you join us in Sedona. We're super excited about the Higher Self, the Bridge of Dimensions retreat. And until then, have fun with your psychic evolution.
Take care.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. We are so grateful that you have taken the time to spend with us on our podcast today. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And remember, these abilities are so natural, they're supernatural.
And if you want to have more fun with your psychic evolution, we do have a mystery school. Check it out. There'll be a link in your show notes, and you can join us and indulge in all our classes and become a part of the Psychic Evolution Inner Eye family. And if you feel like this podcast can help someone, please share it with a friend if you feel like it could help them grow and expand in their psychic evolution.
Until next time, have fun with your psychic evolution.